An additional 4.4 million Americans have filed for unemployment, bringing the total number to 26.5. And I really do want to emphasize that there is a backlog of unemployment claims, meaning that the actual number is likely to be much higher. Now, that is a lot of people. And keep in mind that many states, specifically red states, and states like Florida, which is still considered purple, don't really have a robust unemployment system. And so in Florida specifically, only 6% of people who filed for unemployment actually had their unemployment requests fulfilled. And so many people are suffering right now. For instance, more than 2/3 of US Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and experts predict that people in service jobs, manufacturing, and construction will likely be hit hardest by the upcoming economic turmoil, which represents more than 1/3 of the US's labor force, about 53 million people. Now, one other piece of data that I think is incredibly relevant is the difference we're seeing in the number of unemployment claims in blue states versus red states. Politico found some interesting data, finding that job losses are actually piling up in states like Michigan, a lot of battleground states that provided Donald Trump his victory. So in Michigan, for instance, more than 1 in 4 workers applied for unemployment benefits in the past 5 weeks. Then you go to Pennsylvania, another key Rust Belt state that voted for Trump in 2016. Nearly 1/4 of the workforce has filed for an unemployment claim since mid-March. And then Ohio is seeing more than 17% of workers filing jobless claims, outpacing the national average of 16.1%, as is Minnesota, a state Trump narrowly lost. Now, if you are a Republican or a conservative hoping that there will be financial relief because of Republican leadership, you would be wrong, because now that the conversation has shifted away from corporate bailouts and toward relief for average Americans and for states, you get this kind of talk from people like Mitch McConnell.
The next debate, which I assume will relate to state and local government relief, needs to be when the Senate is back in session with full participation. And in the meantime, also take a look at how much debt we've racked up and not try to wave something through the Senate of that consequence without full participation.
Oh, now we're talking about the debt. When we were passing trillions of dollars in legislation to help big business, which coincidentally happens to be the donors of Mitch McConnell and the Republicans, there was no talk of debt. When we were letting the Fed print an extra $4 trillion to give to exclusively to big businesses, there was no talk of debt. There was no talk of any of that. But now that they're on to the 4th stage where they would help the average American, they're like, there's debt. How are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? When it's their donors, never, ever, ever ask how you're going to pay for it. When it's you guys, I don't know, man. I mean, how the hell would we help a citizen? Citizens don't pay our campaign contributions. The Koch brothers do, ExxonMobil does, etc. So now let me give you a sense of the politics of it as well as the human toll. So first of all, most Americans are onto these guys. By the way, that's part of the reason why Tucker Carlson does shows where he hits big business all the time, because he's sensing that rage on the right-wing side too. 77% of Americans say that Congress largely helped big business. Hey, and they say everybody's low information voters. No, they figured it out. Yeah, their gut tells them what is obvious. And the numbers say it too. Yes, you're absolutely right. They did. They largely helped big business. And Americans know it, including Republicans. So then when you look at the devastation that's coming to the average American, and I'm going to explain in a second why it's so much worse for the workers than it is for the businesses. So you've got 43% of Americans that now have either lost a job or had their wages cut. 43% of American workers. That's a giant number. It's 52% of low-income workers, so they've been hit even harder. 53% of low-income workers are saying they don't know how they're going to pay the bills. They already have bills they can't pay. 53%. Among middle-class Americans, 25% say they don't know how they're going to pay the bills. And even among the highest income earners in America, 11% saying they're having trouble paying the bills. So this is a rolling tide of economic disaster, and it's mainly hitting, of course, citizens, actual human beings, but they are prioritized last. The $1,200 that they put in there in the beginning was a tiny fraction of the overall money spent by Congress. And to give you a sense of context there, the average rent in the country is $1,231. So it doesn't even cover 1 month of rent, let alone food and all of your other expenses. And then what do you do in the second month when now all of a sudden Mitch McConnell and the Republicans go, we don't have any money left. So good luck to you.
So Cenk, yesterday on the show with John, we were discussing a story that broke regarding how Mitch McConnell thinks that rather than funding the states and helping them to stay afloat in the middle of this crisis, it makes more sense to just allow them to go bankrupt. And so, look, sometimes when we do stories, I'm like so mentally overwhelmed with getting the show produced and ready that I haven't really properly sat down to allow the story to enrage me as much as it should. But we all pay our federal taxes. We pay our federal. So, okay. So if Mitch McConnell thinks that states should just go bankrupt and we shouldn't ask for help, then why are we paying federal taxes? I mean, if all that money goes to wars, all that money goes to nonsense, they keep cutting the social safety net over and over again. Like, if we can't rely on the federal government for anything, why do we respect it? Why do we pay our federal taxes? No, it's enraging, especially when you consider that those corporations getting those bailouts got that giant Trump tax cut, $2 trillion over 10 years. And then on top of that, they got bailed out and haven't been paying their taxes. Sometimes they get a tax rebate when they file their taxes. Why do they get a bailout and the American people get nothing and the states get nothing? It's disgusting.
Well, the establishment often says that progressives are too loud, too aggressive, and we don't respect we don't respect civility enough. In fact, the LA Times, in choosing to endorse my opponent in my brief congressional run, said basically Cenk is right about the issues, but he's too aggressive in fighting back, and we prefer civility. Well, this is what civility's gotten us: nonstop surrender to Republicans and their corporate donors, but honestly, the donors of a lot of the Democrats too. And so that's why they work together. And when we point that out, we're the bad guys. Why do we point it out? We point it out to protect you guys, because apparently no one else will. So you got prioritized last again. Now, let me give you a sense of why there's in such a panic to give the overwhelming majority of the money to big business. So when you think about business, what are the costs of a business, right? You've got mainly employee costs. So now a lot of the businesses have already laid people off or cut their wages, so they've mitigated that cost. So especially the ones like restaurants that aren't open, so that obviously they had to furlough or let go, et cetera. There were the waiters, bartenders. We understand that. So who gets hurt the most there? The workers do, because businesses already gotten rid of that cost. So then what cost remains? Fixed costs remain. Well, okay, well then what's the fixed cost? Your main fixed cost usually is rent and interest payments. Okay, well, rent, sometimes now you can't pay the rent. Well, that goes to real estate. Well, real estate, when they don't get the rent, they can't pay the money that they owe to the banks. And wait, the other big cost was interest for a lot of big businesses. That also goes to the banks. Oh, so all of that money at the end of the day is used to pay the banks. And the banks run this place. So that's why they immediately got $6 trillion to make sure that the big banks were okay. Now, did the executives of those banks and the shareholders of those banks share their hundreds of billions of dollars in profits with you guys over the last 10, 20 years? Nope, they didn't share any of the profits. But now, when you desperately need help, they say, hey, all of a sudden we don't have any money. Why? Where did it go? It went to big business, which then gave it to the big banks.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.